All right, how goes it? Excuse the mic quality. None of my studio equipment stuff is set up, so I'm recording on a gaming headset. I know it sounds probably something like I'm in a helicopter. Um, Nonetheless, this is my game, Egg Hunt, inspired by Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Watterson. I'll try and quickly describe the process and what I was thinking when I made it, I guess. I wish I'd taken screenshots along the way. I didn't. I know now. But a lot of everything has changed. Um, Things just like the ground tiles, I went back. Initially, they were probably something along that. I went back and made everything 1 pixel. That required a lot of more coloring, filling in things, whatever you want to call it, to just get things more detailed. The whatever they were currently on, be it the 4 or 8 pixel box, was just too bland. So, start with Calvin. He's the thing I made first. Somebody mentioned he didn't really fit inside the scene, which I can agree and disagree. There was a reason behind it. He's outlined like a comic book character. Whereas the background, initially I wanted to go with something more hand-painted, like a watercolor approach. Speaking of which, let's click on the background. First of all, here's my issue. This was the issue I had with the background. Say I went to create something. From what I saw in the tutorial, there should be something right here that allows me to adjust the size of it. But there's not. But knowing what I know now, let me see. Oops, keep messing up. Knowing what I know now, I guess you could just go in and change it via the scale in there. Which I didn't know. So, no, don't edit, delete. Delete all. So yes, the library, as you get, so obviously I didn't know because that would have came in handy here. The way I had to make the clouds in the background was I made one sprite for the middle of the cloud. You can't even tell, but you can see here the 4 pixels. I went down, even the clouds, I had to go 1 pixel to add details and stuff. So basically I have these middle cloud images, sprites, and I would repeat them, tile them, and then I had to make additional sprites for end caps. And then I went and placed those on the end of each of these clouds. Did one for both sides. So, knowing what I know now, I could go back, change the size of this, add the end caps, and essentially delete those and free up some assets, because I was running out. At some points, I ran out of. I couldn't make any more objects because the free version only allows so many. What is this? Why does that look like that? Oh, there's nothing there. Oh, I'm in the wrong thing. Strange. Okay, so quickly go over the process. Started with Calvin. The game, as it is now, was limited by what I knew and what I could do under Flowlab. It's different now. It would probably be an entirely different game if I started it today. But as I went through the process, I learned more and more about the game. For example, just the tiling of the size of the objects. So everything in the game is 1 square. This tree, for example, 1 square, cloned several times. The rocks, all except this. This was the last asset I made after discovering I could change the size. So just for the sake of doing it, I threw that in there. And if I wanted to do anything more with this game, get really serious with it, or something. Even this bridge, for example, I have end caps that I had to make, and then the middle of the bridge that I cloned to go across. You can see here in my library all the different assets, the background over here. Whereas this could have been one large image, I had to clone and make several different tiles. And the problem with that is having to, for example, for the bridge, you have to match, count like 8 pixels up is where the bridge was, and then basically do some math to figure all that out. So it was a little more painstakingly time-consuming, what have you, the way I did it, but I am happy with it. Somebody thought these were trees; they were bushes. So I think the scaling on them is okay, but I guess maybe they look tree-ish. I mean, bushes like that exist. Nonetheless, a lot of things about the game changed. All this was the used to be just the plain square. This used to all look like this. And that was probably the most difficult process of trying to figure out how to make rock, in pixel art, how to make it and make it look good. Because my original approach was something like this, and you tile that several times and it just doesn't look natural. Until I thought, why not make it build up of several little rocks? And we'll take a look here at the wrong one. But under these green pixels that I added later on, it was all this. Started out, something like a medium gray tone, drew circles, and then I would darken one half, lighten the other half, and doesn't look as good when it's blown up like this. But I judged by the tile thumbnail version, whatever this is, and I was surprised at the result. Like, it turned out really well, I thought. And then to make these individual pieces, I would make a new asset, whatever they're called. And from the library, or whatever it is. Oh, yes, here it is. Browse. I didn't upload anything into the game. I understand a lot of people took that approach. I did not. So these are my sprites. So I would take, for example, I would take the first rock sprite that I made, and then I would come through and delete or erase a portion of it to get these different ones. This one I took it and added the grass on top, and some have different properties. For example, these ones they don't enable collisions, so that it would allow your character to pass through here. So there was a lot of those. There's just a lot of little things that probably, if I were to make the game today, steps that didn't need to be taken. I could have probably made this in half the time easily. But that's part of the process. I understand. So the background here, I just made some speckled dirt thing. Enable collisions is off, so that way I was able to put that in the back. And they are not under, here, just to save. Because, in the game world, what you can't see, there's no reason to have it back there. So these ones, obviously, collisions are enabled. This same process as the rock. I added one with dinosaur bones, or just bones, which I thought, added a lot to the game world. I only threw it in there 3 times or so, but I thought it was a really nice addition when I was thinking of way to fill this space, make it a little more interesting. But back to my point, what I was gonna get to saying was, initially I had issues where my character would sometimes fall behind the tiles. Not fall behind, but like as you're progressing, one of the tiles would be in the foreground. And And that was throughout the entire game, even these trees and whatnot. And I just thought it was something glitchy in regards to the game or the engine or whatever it is. But I came across, I didn't realize the properties were a clickable thing here. So I put a lot of things on keep on level restart. Anything that wasn't animated, was based on the map, stuff like that. Keep on level restart. That helped, but also display order was the big thing. So putting these as 2, I believe the higher you go, the more in the foreground it is. So this one would be 1, yeah. And that made all the difference. Still not 100% sure why or what that has to do with anything, but all right. So I wanted to incorporate Hobbs somehow. My initial idea was to be a hide and seek type game. Similar to collecting the eggs, you'll go around finding Hobbs hiding spots, which, if I wanted to do, I could do now. It would just be a lot of, I believe, little animations, like with this squirrel and the turtle there. They're proximity-based, so when Calvin gets within a certain proximity of them, let me see if is it in the behaviors? Proximity. Okay, yeah. So see, there's the proximity for the squirrel. The turtle is something similar, and it's set to Calvin. Character is the same thing, but just to specify. So just like something little I wanted to add to the game to give the person, add some life to the environment, more or less. Take a look at the turtle. Turtle just kind of dives in the water, and I made the proximity so that there's no possible way you could run up and kick him or anything like that. I had a friend play the game initially, and because of the way the animation is, the proximity was smaller, so when he went up to the turtle and jumped, it appeared as if he jumped on it and it died and it fell in the water. So he had told me he thought he killed a turtle, which I thought was funny, so I increased the proximity distance on it so that wasn't, you know, if a little child were to play the game and they didn't think they stepped on a turtle or something. Little things. Simple puzzle elements like the moving of the boulders and stuff. You see in a lot of platforming games. I threw that in there. The boulder itself, this one in particular, I had to add some kind of a stop to it. I couldn't enable collisions on the trees, obviously, so Calvin could walk through them in the bushes. The rock was the only stop, but if you push the boulder all the way to here, there was no way to get it out of the corner. So to prevent that from happening, I had to make some kind of a stop. I put the little shovel. It's capsule based, so the size, whereas this is circle, Calvin is a circle, and you know, for the most part, these are all squared shaped. This one is a capsule, so it allows Calvin to walk over it, but not the boulder. So that worked out well. This is probably the most difficult puzzling section, which I wanted it to be. Really introduces you to the wonky way the Flowlab works, jump-wise. But because it was difficult and stuff, there's nothing on this level, this middle ground, to no enemies. There's nothing that's going to kill you and make you restart. And then the well, similar to the bridge, I had to make a middle piece and end caps. The middle piece collisions are not enabled so that you fall through, and I had a little animation. This one was on impact, like enable collision, but it wasn't a solid, so that when you fall through, there's like dust particles or what have you. And then just more of the more of the boulder puzzle elements. The waterfall is all one single tile cloned with an animation. The enemies were just honestly something I just came up with out of the blue. The whole premise of Calvin and Hobbes is they go on adventures. Much of it was based outdoors. So that's kind of the influence for the entire outdoors thing. Underground, you know, in the comic book, this would probably be some kind of bug or something, but in his pretend world, you know, the whole thing is based on Calvin's mind and his imagination, so next thing you know, it's an alien. So with enemies, there's some free reign to just kind of make whatever a kid might imagine. And then bats, just to keep it a little grounded in reality. But also I wanted some form of scrolling enemy at the tops, just to add some, whatever the word I'm looking for is. I really can't think of the word. Nonetheless, to add another enemy as well as some change. Why can I not think of that word? It's one of those words you're probably thinking of. I don't know why I can't. Anyways, nonetheless. So yep, I threw those in there. Obviously, all these had to be made and animated, as well as the squirrel, the turtle, the waterfall. So I threw a lot of little animations in there just to give the environment some life. But more or less just, I didn't want it to be overly difficult or too platformy. I wanted it to be more kind of like an adventure, you know, just an adventure exploratory game, more or less. So the enemies are actually thrown in there last as an afterthought, just to add more to the game. But that's why I tried to throw things in that would be appealing to the eye and whatnot. Yep. So the music. Well, let's take a look at some of the behaviors and whatnot. So run and jump was thrown in there. I didn't do anything to that except for the jump sound, changed it or added it. I don't know if it was there initially. Scroll view, obviously. Okay, thank you. There we go. This was a tricky part. I had to, for the collisions, I had to put a stop in for the keyboard on the collision, because the game would, if you were walking left or right when you hit an enemy, the sound would keep playing in the background, even though everything is on pause and stop. It would still be blip, 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 blip in the back. So I had to figure out, because there was no thing telling me this. I had to figure out, you know, how to get that to stop. Which this was all fun once you got a grasp of it, figuring out how to add things, how to make things work. It became a process that I actually enjoyed. So initially I didn't enjoy making this, but as I got along further into the process, I couldn't stop. I kept coming back wanting to add things, like the little animations and stuff, until eventually I ran out of assets and had to figure out what I needed and didn't need. Like I said, a lot was changed. This entire cave was just something you passed through, jumped up. But I wanted to add a puzzle element to it, you know, just a platforming section in there. So a lot of that was changed. This over here, without these little end caps, these sprites that I threw on there, it was just, you know, a big blocky hole, which looked really bad. So a lot of this stuff was just, I had to make it more appealing to the eye, doing a couple of these where applicable. And so the alert's pretty simple. There's tutorials and stuff on that. The egg is basically coin collecting. Made my own, as opposed to the coin, made my own egg, sprite, what have you. So yeah, I turned it into an egg hunt. Like I said, I initially wanted to do a hide and seek, turned it into an egg hunt. And made them look like little tiger eggs, which obviously, you know, mammals don't. Moving on. I wanted to incorporate hops somehow, but without, I still wanted the game to be, you know, not something torn out of a comic book and put into game form. I wanted it to be kind of its own thing, but influenced by Calvin and Hobbes. So there's that. Sounds, I use much of the in-game sounds except for the... Is it this? The background music, which I spent hours and hours trying to figure out how to get it on here until somehow I mix and matched URLs and codes and stuff found one that worked. Actually, I didn't even realize it worked until I just kind of threw it in there. That was the best chance I had. I came back later, refreshed, came back to work on the game. Next thing I know, it was working. I was like, oh. So here's a look at Soundation, is where I went to make the game, or the soundtrack. In the studio, you're provided with, a ton of free sounds and loops, things of that nature. So I couldn't tell you which one I laid for the beginning. That original, I know of something MIDI, but just for example, what? I don't know any of these. Let's just take a look. You can go like really into detail with these and change a lot of stuff. I actually have a MIDI keyboard as well. If I wanted to hook that up and make, if I actually knew how to play anything by piano. Which comes in handy. Like I said, my studio equipment, none of that is set up. That's why I'm on this crappy microphone. But for example, we take something like that, and then you just, can I just copy paste? Okay, that's what I thought. So you can. You just repeat things like this, and it makes it easy because you can go in blocks. My beats per minute is 125, which is what I used for the one that I made. And you can search these things. For example, here, 125 beats per minute. There's not as much. It's not as commonly used as, say, 120 or something. So I only had so many things to work with. But, you just kind of layer them from there. And what I did was I just slowly built up a track, added layers and layers, and then kind of dwindled back down to the end and looped it. And the one I made, I thought, specifically, though, really fit, the game itself. There were some bird sounds that I threw in there just to add to the, like I said, the environment and stuff, kind of give it more life. But yeah, I credit this. I'm really glad I got it to work, because I credit that to, that adds so much more to the game. It's not tangible, it's just there in the background, but background music will just add so much more to everything. So I'm really happy that worked out. The intro alert, things of that. So nothing crazy here. A lot of things going back and forth. The expression thing was kind of a pain to figure out, but eventually I got it. And is there anything interesting about any of these? I think for the most part they're just animations and stuff. Let's take a look. So the eggs just have a resting state animation. The squirrel, bat, all those things. Well, the squirrel and turtle are unique in that their proximity. And I had to go frame by frame to make, something look like they were moving or whatnot. The bat and the alien are just repeating. What is this? There we go. Repeating frames. So obviously I had to make. Oh, I doubled them. Gave it a 4 frame delay or whatever that is for. I have no idea. 4. The delay time is 4. For what? I don't know. But, very simple. The only issue is I had no way of knowing. I don't think you can. If I could have just rotated this, perhaps, or, something like that. Problem is you got to, I had to erase his eye and the top of his head and his arms and then basically move them by redrawing them. Kind of a pain, because you're constantly having to go back to see where it was, where you're moving it to. There's no onion skinning or anything, that would have helped a lot. So It's not the best thing for animation. But yeah, all said and done, I'm really happy with it. It was a good time. I really got into it. I'd like to even go in, like I said, free up some assets, redo some of these things like the bridge and uh, maybe even the cave itself and the rocks. Well, I would not want to go in with the pixels, but now having that made, you can essentially go in and make this one asset by taking all these individual pieces. So that would be cool, and then making another level. Like for example, I wanted one what looked like, because some of his adventures, a lot of them had to do with either well, dinosaurs, which I guess would fit into this environment, but there was alien planets. He'd be in the kitchen shooting or whatnot, but the comic strip would consist of him going around shooting aliens, and then at the end, it would show his mom looking at him, and he had a broomstick or something, and was the whole reason I loved the comic series, was for those moments where it'd be like you realize he's not actually doing any of these things. He's just pretending and his imagination going wild. But one level even underwater would be cool. Make a different Calvin with like a little scuba thing. Just add things. All those little things would be cool. So yep, that is my game. That was my thought process and what I went through to do it. Hope you enjoyed it, I guess.